Hey Dominic, can you see me and hear me?
Hey Zach, I can see you.
So I thought today we could talk a little bit about plantar fasciitis, but first I'll briefly introduce myself. My name's Dr. Zach Carton, and I'm the co-founder and chief medical officer with Insoles, talking to.
Dominic, my name. Hello, I'm the head of design at Insoles.
So yeah, thank you so much for talking with me today. So for plantar fasciitis, I thought we could talk a little bit about what is it, how do people get it, and what sort of things can be done to help with the symptoms. Um, I'd start off just by saying plantar fasciitis is a condition where people have pain on the bottom of their foot, usually around the heel, and it's really at the insertion point of the plantar fascia, or a sheet of connective tissue that goes into the heel bone and the heel bone itself. And then the last little medical piece of information that's interesting is that fasciitis means inflammation of the fascia, but that's kind of a misnomer. It turns out that when we look at the tissue under the microscope, if there was actual inflammation, you'd expect to see lots of immune cells and everything like this in the area, but that's not the case. We just see kind of disordered connective tissue. So maybe plantar fasciitis is a little bit of a misleading word, but it's an incredibly common condition. 1 in 10 people, at least in the United States, has it. I don't know about Germany. And it's one of the main things people come to stride for help with. So I thought maybe Dominic, you might have a little bit more thoughts or information about what it is and the causes, especially with the torque of the foot.
Yeah, and yeah, you said it right. It's also in Germany. It's the same. Like it's the most common foot problem that we face here every day. Mm. And the question is, like as you said, how does it occur? Why do so many people have it? And the answer actually very often leads back to the shoes that people wear. So most of the time, foot problems starts with shoes, right? In this case, it's that shoes very often are too soft, even though it feels comfy in the beginning, and also with heel spur, so soft shoe feels good, but it's at the same time the cause, the root of the problem, because soft shoes or narrow shoes cause the foot to have these torsion movements, right? A bit of torsion is normal, so heel stride is on the lateral side of the heel, and then you push off over the big toe. But if the shoe is too soft and doesn't support the foot in any way, then this pronation might be too much. And if you take a look at the skeleton of the foot, this movement here, that causes that the tendon or the plantar fascia gets like translatoric load and torsion, and that very often causes this issue, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. And what you said with the shoes that are too soft, at least in my experience, I also see this happening with shoes that are too hard. It's kind of like the two extremes can really cause undue torsion. So when it's too soft, it kind of gives the foot too much ability to move. And when it's too hard and it holds the foot too rigidly, even micro torsions can be really, really strong. And for the same reason, people with flat feet can get plantar fasciitis because the plantar fascia itself isn't really tight enough to support the structure and the arch of the foot, and that looseness allows for a lot of that wobbling or torsion. But the same thing with people with really high arches where that plantar fascia is held really tight, even though the net amount of movement might be a little bit less. Any kind of excess force can really, really, really cause a lot of stretching of the plantar fascia. So I don't know. I think the story of Goldilocks, is that a German story?
Goldilocks?
You don't know Goldilocks, the girl, and she breaks into the house with the three bears, and um, the mother bear, the bed is too soft. The father bear, the bed is too hard, but the baby bear, the bed's just right. You've
Well,
never heard this?
well, no, actually not.
Well, it's a super famous nursery rhyme in the US, but basically it's always like there's two extremes that are bad, and the middle is usually the best. And I think plantar fasciitis is like the perfect medical condition that's an analogy of Goldilocks. You don't want shoes that are too hard. You don't want shoes that are too soft. If your feet are too flat, you're at much higher increased risk of getting plantar fasciitis. Also, if your arch is too high,
Yeah.
and I think that might be a good segue into um, how do custom orthotics relieve the pain and help with plantar fasciitis.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. It stabilizes the foot in a way. Um, Even though, and that's what we always say, we don't want to passively stabilize the foot just by forcing it into a certain position. What we want to do is we want the foot to elevate itself. So by stimulating the muscles, we cause a muscle reaction, and this stabilizes the foot. So you, the one who wears the orthotics, do it actively and therefore train the muscles to not have this anymore.
So you've been making custom orthotics for a while now. Do you have, like in your experience, how long would you say people need to use custom orthotics to start to experience some pain relief? And how long do you think they need to use them to kind of be cured, for lack of a better word, from the condition?
Yeah, it depends on how far the plantar fasciitis is developed already. Because if it turns to a heel spur, so that's if the plantar fascia is inflamed here a bit, it might cause at one point that the bone grows here as a reaction, like protective reaction to the plantar fascia. So if you have this bone needle stick here, then it needs different treatment as well. In this case, we can only supply orthotics that lower pain, right? If it's still the inflammation, what we need to do is give the foot a basis to heal itself, right? To get rid of this movement. It depends very much from the user. Some feel a relief immediately. Others take 1 or 2 weeks of adaptation. Usually what we say is wear the orthotics within the first week 2 hours a day, second week 4 hours a day, and then you should be good, because also the body has to adapt to the new
Right.
situation.
Yeah, I see basically the exact same thing that you're describing, and I typically recommend my patients and stride customers that if you have flat feet or if you have high arches, your chances of getting plantar fasciitis skyrocket. So the 10% over the general population isn't the same for people with high risk conditions, and it can be debilitating. People aren't able to walk, they have to change their whole daily activity routine. And I think the preventative aspect of custom orthotics can also do a great job at helping people with those conditions ward off ever suffering from this kind of severe pain.
Exactly. And one very important fact is we have to eliminate the cause of it in the first place. So of course we can make the best insoles, but if you continue wearing those harmful shoes, too soft, too hard, then we will only level out the bad shoe condition. But what we want to do is have a good foundation with a good shoe, and then put the orthotic inside to be at an even higher level of treatment.
Do you have any shoe brand or type recommendations? I think when people hear there's shoes that are too hard or too soft, they might not have an idea of kind of what a recommended type of shoe would be.
Yeah. Also, this of course depends a bit on your weight. Like for a very big guy, a hard shoe is softer than for So, but in general, what you should take a look at in your shoes is to have, if possible, no heel pitch. So that means the heel and the ball area should be on the same level. Most shoes have a little bit of a heel raise, right? So have a flat sole and a wide toe box. Because if we strap the toe like in this direction, right, it can stabilize the foot. So that causes this movement as well. Wide toe box, a flat heel would be good. Of course, there's some brands, like for instance, I think in America you might know Ultra shoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they are very, very good for that. So I like to supply Ultra shoes.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful to know. I think one thing we skipped over is how do you know if you have plantar fasciitis? And there's a couple really common symptoms that are kind of giveaways. So if you have heel pain and you didn't like recently smash your heel into something, like get injured in some obvious way, and the heel pain just comes on kind of naturally throughout the day, that's a really high likelihood that you have plantar fasciitis. And another key kind of feature is that it's pain that gets worse. So people will wake up in the morning, they'll feel fine, they'll get a cup of coffee, walk out the door, and then slowly throughout the day that pain worsens, which is another like big sign. Another thing is pointing your toes up towards your shins, kind of. So going like this with your toes, that stretches out the plantar fascia. And because your toes and the heel are connected, when you stretch your toes up, it pulls actually on the back of the heel. And if that causes pain, that's another kind of key finding. I don't know if there's anything that I missed that you see as well.
The pain, I would say, is very specific. It feels like if you have a thorn inside the heel, right? Like it's very pointy, feels, yeah. And you can also trigger this pain, just to be sure. If you take your foot and put pressure here and it triggers the pain, you most likely have plantar fasciitis, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very common condition, and it's not super hard to diagnose. So most people who have it know that they have it, but just in case, I thought it might be helpful. Other than footwear and custom orthotics, a couple other things that can help are stretches. So if pointing your toes up at your shin causes pain, it might be a good indication that you may want to massage the bottom of the foot. There's like really simple, not very costly, like massage balls that you can run your foot over, and they can do a great job.
Like putting your foot on a black roll, stretching.
Yeah.
Or you can also do it manually a bit, taking your heel very tight in the midfoot and then like mobilizing this a bit, right?
Yeah.
That's very good.
And I would say doing like 2 or 3 of these exercises per day, 30 seconds each, can make a difference. Unfortunately, because plantar fasciitis is such a like insidious condition, it's not like one little thing that's wrong. It's the result of a lot of stress over time. It takes a lot of time and effort, especially if you're going with stretches alone, to kind of help that condition. And I think that's why custom orthotics are so important, because if you do all the right things, you stretch correctly, you give enough rest, but then you go back and wear shoes that are not going to support you, or do some sort of physical activity where you're going to continue stressing it out, you're just never going to be able to make progress. It's like swimming against the current. No matter how good your form is, you're always going to be pushed back. So it's really important to kind of use additional things, the right shoe, a custom insole to get that edge, to help you fully relieve the pain.
All set.
Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up on our time a little bit. I did Google what are some plantar fasciitis fun facts, and almost none of them were that fun. I asked ChatGPT, and I did verify that they're true. There were a couple things there that I think we could add that were a little bit helpful. One is that if you have a job where you stand a lot, you're also at higher risk. So like nurses, teachers, people who work in construction or engineering where they're standing all day, that can be a big risk factor for getting plantar fasciitis. Another fun fact was that the plantar fascia is really strong. So if you were like able to kind of hang a weight, if you had it just in your hand and hang a weight, it could hold something like 700 or 800 kilograms, which is kind of interesting. So, which makes sense, because if you're like running and jumping, all the weight of that, and especially if you're a bigger guy, like has to be supported by the plantar fascia. It all goes into that arch. So not super surprising, but kind of cool. It's not just for older adults. I know some people think that plantar fasciitis is kind of like an old person condition, but it's really not. People, even as teenagers, can get it, and particularly runners or people who do sports.
Pilots cause it.
Yeah, and then the last fun fact, which is my guess, this is a guess for you. Do you know when the first medical description of plantar fasciitis occurred? Like what year?
That's a heck of a question, man. I have
You,
no idea.
no,
Probably somewhere around where people started wearing shoes. So at the very beginning of when people ride.
oh, that's so funny. So the first description that ChatGPT notes, so maybe this is wrong, is 1812. So actually super recent.
Oh.
But I'm sure people had plantar fasciitis much earlier. I think they might mean like based on like the actual tissue histology and looking at it. But
And probably before that they had other issues, right? So,
yeah, I think yeah.
No, so I don't care.
But actually, I think it is probably related to when shoes were initially worn. But even though shoes have been around for a long time, there was still a lot more barefoot activity in ancient history as opposed to today. And going barefoot, like walking on a beach, can be very therapeutic for plantar fasciitis, or walking on soil, things like this. It's just something we don't really have access to that much today.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's basically it for me. I don't know if you have any parting thoughts.
I think, yeah, it's all said.
We covered it. All right. Well, until next time, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, Dominic.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks.